Don't forget to mute when you come in, ladies. Just trying to get Dr. Dev back so that I can give him host control.
Right. Thank you very much, Indira.
Indy, can you allow me to share the screen again?
Yes,
Thanks.
Dr. Dev, I'm trying to find your... Where are you? Is your camera on, Dr. Dev?
Yep, it should. Oh, no.
Oh, wait, okay, there you go. There's so happy I'm seeing 49 women came back on. All right, there you go. Your host now.
Thank you. Did I reach?
You okay? Yeah, there you
Right.
close.
Right, everybody's seeing that again? All in order? Right, thank you for coming back. I know we've crossed dinner time and so people probably starving. So next, so that's the supplementation. I was talking about vitamin D. Vitamin D, anybody who isn't feeling quite well and nobody can figure out what is going on, check your vitamin. Fairly sure that it's quite low and it needs to be, you need additional supplementation. The vitamin D that you get from the sun though, it's different. So it's the best way to get it. So find a way to get out in the sun, go for walks, go into start a little kitchen garden, any opportunity you can get to go in the sun, not the burning sun that we have later, probably sun, right? Otherwise fry. But it's a different vitamin D, but if you can't get that, then yes, you need to be supplemented. Zinc and vitamin C, COVID is coming back, people start wearing your masks. That's a segue. Mindfulness, the mindfulness actually deals a little bit in terms of just taking the time to sort of reflect, to meditate. It is something that is becoming a sort of more prominent and stuff in terms of healing. And if we have all of these cognitive issues with regards to irritability and frustration and mood swings and stuff, that's where mindfulness comes in. Part of the treatment is this cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff. These are things, unfortunately, I think Trinidad needs to catch up quite a lot with regards to certain things, but we are raising awareness with regards to that. This is a nice term, vitamin H. That you cannot live life, right, worrying about everything that's going to happen, everything that is out of your control. You cannot change what your blood results are going to say. Don't worry about it. You cannot change the results of your children doing C-sec and CAPE, right? You'll have to sort of accept and try to deal with it. But you have to live a life where you find a humor in your life throughout the day, right? And I think that is an important thing because it's so very common for a lot of women to be so frustrated and so disenchanted and stuff that they may not even smile for the entire day, which is not a good thing. So you have to live a life where there is humor. However you inject it into your life, you have to make the effort. And number 7 of the pillars is community. And this is what we're doing. We all have to have a purpose. Our jobs to a certain extent give us that. For some people, for some it's their children, however you decide to measure your success. But COVID took away that because it took away the ability for us to meet and share, experiences. Trinidadians like food, going to the beach line, going to the river line, that sort of thing. The community around you has to be also a part. You cannot live in isolation, right? And you will become more and more depressed if you do isolate yourself from other people. So if you are to manage the menopause from a global point of view, it is not about taking a tablet and feeling better. Don't ever stop and think that it's just as easy as that. You have to put these 7 pillars into place. And then for the other things related to the climacteric, which you now know, is that we can use supplementation, right?
Dr. Dal, I'm seeing Simone Claxton's hands up. I'm not sure she has a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Simone.
Yes, hi, good night, Doc.
Good night.
Good night. The question is around the vitamin D because I'm glad you mentioned it. It's a question that I had in mind. What is the best supplement, the most tolerated supplement? Because at the moment, I have a lot of stuff going on with me and my body's not tolerating a lot of supplements. But I know that I need the vitamin D, but I don't know which is the best for the supplement to get it from the safest.
Yeah, the thing, that's because, here's the thing, because there's so many different types, right? And put it this way, not many of the supplements are regulated. So I generally, I'm making a plug here, but I generally tend to use the Jameson brand because I know they're regulated to a certain extent and there's some quality control that takes place out of Canada. A lot of things we might either buy from Amazon or we see on the shelf. You know, I can't say for sure whether there is any quality testing at all. And I have a vested interest in things like drugs that are not basically saying and doing what they're supposed to do, right? We get a lot of counterfeit drugs, forgive me, out of India, that is basically boric acid. It doesn't have any active ingredient, right? And it's marketed here, and unfortunately, it's ubiquitous. People come with their suitcases and put all sorts of things. So in terms of that, you have to kind of shop around to see what works. You know, the other thing is the amount that you need to take, because if you're severely vitamin D deficient, you will need some fairly large doses to make an impact. Have you had your levels tested?
No, I haven't had my levels tested. So is that
Right.
just a simple blood test you can get at most
Yeah,
places?
yeah, it's a blood test that they do in all of the labs and stuff that, you know, you have it done. And based on that, put it this way, if it comes back very low, we know you need a high dose one. The standard doses that comes with most of the ones we get over the counter is about 1,000 units. Occasionally, you'll see 2,000 international units. But if you're very low, my dear, you need somewhere in the realm of about 4,000 per day to make an impact, right? To get that, I've had to sort of resort to Amazon and stuff because I haven't seen that on the shelf here. So what I might suggest is the first thing is to get the blood levels done. And then, you know, all of you all will have my contact, right? And then we could chat and see what we can offer from there. Yeah.
Okay, Doc. Thanks very much.
Good, good. Right. India, I think a couple others raise hands. Anybody?
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, my name is Sharian. I'm vegetarian actually.
Very good.
So the vitamin B, isn't that mostly from meat products?
But yes, so you're talking about B12 in particular. So that's
Yeah.
one of the sort of things that where you'll probably need to get some supplementation. They have things, what we have down here is Neurobene, that comes basically both as a tablet and then you get the injection periodically. So when you say vegetarian, there's nothing, you're strict sort of vegan, there's no meat at all, there's no fish, nothing, seafood?
Nothing. I use like dairy products, but no eggs, no fish, no meat.
Okay. Again, because we try to be evidence-based, have you ever had your B12 levels done? Just out of curiosity.
Actually, I don't believe so, no.
Right, and I'll tell you why. If it is you do your B12 levels, right, and based on your current diet, it is normal, you do not need to supplement. Does that make sense? If you get some of it from diet, wherever your dietary sources are, although you get a high concentration in your meat and stuff, it might be worthwhile, because if you're not anemic and your B12 is normal, you don't fix what is not broken. You don't assume that you are B12 deficient, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Yes, it does.
Right. So that's a starting point. And if you find that you are deficient, my dear, then we look at options with regards to supplementation. All right? Don't do anything more. Your body is a fantastic pharmacy. You can make pretty much everything that you need. Yep.
Can I jump in for a second just to share an experience that I had recently?
Sure.
Experiencing severe nausea and dizziness. And so I took myself to the health center. And in my conversation with the physician, she asked whether I was supplementing with B12. And I told her that I wasn't. And she recommended that I get a B12 supplement. But because I'm also vegan, I had to go online and purchase a vegan B12 supplement, and I have been taking it, and so far the nausea and dizziness has not reoccurred.
Okay.
So,
Right. So it may be, yes, if it is that you are, again, because you're strict vegan, aren't you? Right. So I think, yes, in that case, perhaps that's making a difference. And I think wherever there are deficiencies in our diet, depending on your diet, yes, supplementation helps, but it should never replace. Right. But if it's working fine, and it might be good to actually follow up and test and see where you are in terms of the B12 level, and just make sure you're not anemic or anything like that. So it's good, yes, but I always sort of believe in sort of finding out where we are first before we try to fix things. All right. Okay. Carrying on. This is just. Is there somebody else I missed?
Sorry, Dr. Simon. Simon here again.
Yes.
Permit me to share something, please. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah, you're a little bit faint.
Sorry, it's regarding the B12. Right.
Right.
What actually happened is I discovered I had a B12 anemia late last year.
Right.
I was having a lot of weakness.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's something that a lot of women are not aware of, that a lot of the symptoms that they're experiencing, you know, like probably the weakness and certain is feeling unstable. You know, you're feeling like, you know, you maybe want to tip over, a bit dizzy and stuff like that. It's due to the B12 anemia. I was having that problem, and when I discovered it, well, I suspected it at first, and then when I checked my levels, it was down to nothing. It was very, very low, and I started supplementing. However, I realized that the supplementing was helping to an extent. I was on a B complex, but I had one on the tongue, the sublingual one. Right. That actually melts and gets into your system straight away. And then that was helping. But then I had to go into the injections because it's still, you know, I still had a bit of weakness. And it took quite a while before that, you know, kind of subsided. Yeah. Like, I think a lot of people really aware of it, and that B12, it affects a lot of, you know, a lot of other systems in your body.
Yes, I think
so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that. Yes.
I had a lot of health complications over the past year. Yeah.
So what happens because there are quite a number of people who are moving towards a vegetarian or vegan type lifestyle, right? We're going to see that more and more often. And one of the things that is important at this stage in our lives, certainly in your 40s and stuff, the basic blood test that is done is a complete blood count, right? Apart from all the liver function and cholesterol and screening for diabetes, etc. And in your complete blood count, if you are anemic, the two primary causes for that anemia, one is iron deficiency, which a lot of people do have. And then the other one, and what happens is the cells are shaped a different way, and the indices, right, reflect different things. And the other one has to do with B12 and folate deficiency. So if you're anemic, that's one way to flag it. And then if it's the indices point to B12, that's one way to address it as well. So the importance of having these sort of periodic tests, right, and preventative screening, I can't stress that enough, because otherwise you just sort of, you know, spinning top in mud and just stumbling through, you know, trying to figure out why you're feeling so tired. Yes, we can say that we can blame the menopause, and there is an organic cause for your tiredness, like the B12 or even iron deficiency, right? So again, a part of all of this is doing the requisite tests, right, to see where we are. All right, let's move on a little bit. So in terms of trying to replace this estrogen now that is no longer there, right? What nature, again, in her infinite wisdom, gave us phytoestrogens. And phytoestrogens basically is the natural form of estrogens that occur mainly in our food. And they have all, I won't go into the big names, flavonoids and lignans and stuff, but if you look, basically, you eat the cruciferous vegetables, and this is what so everybody gets this sort of talk with me. Your broccoli, your cauliflower, your cabbage, your spinach is one of the most potent sort of foods you can eat in terms of antioxidants, spinach and kale. I've been reading a lot about watercress. We get lovely watercress here. That's one of the best things you can eat to get all your vitamins and minerals. All right, don't worry with the beer. I was going to take this out. Don't drink beer. Beans, lentils, soya beans. We know these are very good sources of estrogens as well. Flax seeds, sesame seeds, those of you who have your little oats in the morning, sprinkle your flax, right? Even your sesame seeds, you can have it as well. And the fruits that are very, very high in these estrogen includes things like apples and grapes and berries and stuff. And your fruit, nuts, and seeds should be your snacks in between your meals, right? But you cannot ignore the importance of your vegetables. Whilst you need a little bit of your glucose from rice and your starches from provision, etc., half of your plate at any point in time must be chunky veg, right? Your salad is on the side of that. Your lettuce and cucumbers and tomato is not vegetables. You don't treat it like that. Your vegetables is what you're picking basically from the ground. Half your plate must be the broccoli, cauliflower, and stuff. All those other things are supplemented. Cucumbers is 95% water, right? You can't say I ate 2 pieces of cucumber and half a tomato and that you had your vegetables for the day. No, that's not good enough, right? So your peas, beans, corn, dal, lentils, that's where your sources are in terms of high levels of estrogen. And on a personal note, I was talking to my mom some time ago and asking her about her menopause and stuff. And it turns out barely anything at all, but her diet, she turned 80 last couple of weeks, right? Her diet is just packed with vegetables. There's mainly that. And her transition was barely anything at all. There was no need to even have a discussion about HRT, barely any hot flashes or anything else. So I think for the vast majority of you all, if you're trying to overcome these hurdles, it must start with what you put in your mouth. And like I said, just think about it. If you could pick it from a tree or pull it from the ground, eat it. You can't pick 2 doubles from a tree, don't eat it. You can't dig up Kellogg's cornflakes, don't eat it, right? Simple as that. That's the only rule you need to follow. And drink plenty of water. Right. So in terms of trying to help now, in terms of giving back natural sources of estrogen, and the reason why there is a market for this is that estrogen in its pure form, right, like I said, can be dangerous. It can affect things with regards to your blood pressure. It can affect things with regards to your risk of breast cancer, which we'll come to. So they were looking at ways and means of giving women something back that will not harm them. And that's where these sort of things. I have no affiliation with any of these companies and stuff. I just try to find whatever Trinidad has to offer. And now I've started to sort of bring in my own stuff as well, because there's very little, unfortunately. But this is one that I've come across, which is called Complete Balance. And what I like about this one as compared to the others is that different women have different symptoms. And you cannot paint every woman with the same brush. There are some who have issues with regard to the hot flushes during the day, and this is why they have a morning formula. And then at night, they have some women who have problems sleeping. But you cannot give somebody an all-in-one thing that contains stuff to make you sleep in the middle of the day. Your bosses aren't going to like that, and dropping asleep at work is not ideal. So that's why they split this, and that is why I like this. And I depend on feedback, from women, whether this is working or not. And I've had generally pretty good feedback on it, right? So this is one of the simple things that can be used that does not cause any harm, right? Which is most important. And the morning one, if you just look at this, you see it comes back to those B vitamins I was talking about. Even the B12, it has 5 times your daily requirement. So it will capture those who are vitamin B12 deficient. It has the soy, and there's something called black cohosh as well that contains it. So this is something that helps a lot in terms of during the day and the hot flushes, etc. The estrogen also has a role to play with your bones. It helps with that. And this one is the evening dose, and it has a bit of calcium, just a little bit. You still need your calcium from all your green stuff. It has a bit of soy, but this is what it has in the night to help you sleep, which is melatonin to a certain extent. So this is just basically something, a supplement that works over a period of time. It has to build up in the blood, right? But this is what helps quite a number of women without raising their risks. Because if you tell me you're diabetic, hypertensive, your mother and your aunt had breast cancer, I can't prescribe estrogen for you. It's an absolute contraindication. Right. So we're getting now a little bit more into actual sort of hormone replacement therapy. also known as ERT, estrogen replacement. And because the Americans like to be different, they call it menopausal hormone therapy. All the same term, because the drug, the primary drug that is given, right, is estrogen. Now, this is where I have a concern in this country. You cannot prescribe this estrogen in terms of its pure form. It depends on if the woman has either had a hysterectomy or not. If you have your womb, right, and you give estrogen in its pure form, it is going to change the lining of the womb and make it proliferate and over-proliferate and become cancer. So this particular drug, which is the one that's been around a long time, and sadly, again, things have changed here. This was around my time for a long time, 20 years ago. It's not readily available. Some little pockets you might get it. I'm trying to bring it in. But Premarin is pregnant mare's urine. It's actually estrogen that is extracted from the horse's urine, the pregnant mare, right? So this has been around, and it is actually one of the closest sort of estrogens that you can get, but it's on its own. You see here, all they say is conjugated estrogen, that's the dose. It comes in a pack of 28, so you have 3 months worth, 3 times 28 in one pack. If you were to prescribe this to a woman with a uterus intact, you are going to trigger changes that can lead to cancer. You cannot prescribe this. Estrogen is balanced by a sister hormone called progesterone. And unfortunately, I didn't get a good picture here. But if you look at this, this is a drug that we do get here. This is probably the only one. It's called Angelique. And it has drospirenone and estradiol. So it has estrogen, but it has a type of progesterone. And what that does, everything in life, everything in nature requires a balance. And the progesterone is what protects the lining. Estrogen does its job, right? So if you have a uterus, this is the one thing I want you all to take home, because so many hysterectomy you can take just, right? The thing with this is you take shortest possible. Men who will go through a climacteric with the menopausal symptoms of that might last 6 months and then ease. Some might last a year, 2 years, 5 years, it varies. But I don't generally like going into knocking on 5 years. If you need it for 2 years and stuff, I'll usually advocate for that. And the other thing that you must be aware of when you're taking hormones is that you don't stop it at the drop of a hat. You actually have to wean yourself off of this, because your body, which has been now accustomed to this lovely estrogen, one day you decide, I'm going to stop. I don't want to take tablets anymore. And your body just goes into shock. So if you have to come off of these things, if you are taking 7 times for the week, right, you do that for a couple of weeks, then you go down to 6 times, then 5 days a week for a couple of weeks. So you wean yourself off over a period of months, right? So you have to bear that in mind when you're taking these things. I don't think they tell women about these things. It's just done sort of ad hoc. So unfortunately, in Trinidad, there isn't much we can offer. In the UK, there are about 10 different types of this. So whereas in the UK, you're armed with guns and bazookas and tanks and stuff, in Trinidad, they give you a plastic fork and a rubber band when it comes to management of the menopause. So unfortunately, the doctors don't have much to work with, and they probably don't even know, right, about a lot of the things that, you know, the pros and cons of these things. Go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, quick one. For women who are experiencing debilitating symptoms and you're on either the estrogen or the estradiol and progesterone.
Right.
how does it change your metabolism so that you can come off it? Or do your symptoms ease and then that's the end of it? Like, or is this something that, I mean, you're seeing that after a certain point you should come off of it, but if it doesn't ease your symptoms, then and how do you manage it thereafter?
Right. So remember, the symptoms we went through will be things like the hot flushes, etc., the chronic fatigue, you know, the memory loss, that sort of thing. So what you tend to find is from the time you start, and this, of course, I'm speaking from other women's experiences when they feedback. So they tell me within a matter of days to weeks, right, a lot of the issues that they've been having, that once it's generally due to the menopause, there is a significant improvement. They get up with more energy. They feel, you know, alive during the day. They find, okay, the memory is starting to improve now. The hot flushes from happening 3-4 times a day goes to twice a week, right? So what it does, it allows you to cope better, right? It gives you back that quality of life. But like I said, nobody, let's say if your transition is at 50, nobody has hot flushes for the rest of their life. You don't have hot flushes for 30 years.
Okay.
The hot flushes, in some might last 6 months, in some might last a year. You use it, right, to just transition that sort of period so that it makes that transition a little bit better. And if what I have to do, or what I generally do, is in the consultation with the doctor, you need to have somebody who can recognize the pros and cons and discuss that with you. Because if you have uncontrolled hypertension, you're not a good candidate for estrogen. If you have borderline well-controlled hypertension, you may be a good candidate for a low-dose type of estrogen. Do you see? So there are so many different subtleties that need to be factored in. Just because you hear in Lisa she's taking this doesn't mean that it's going to work the same way for you. So you can't always assume things because you've heard somebody else try this. And unfortunately, that's a Trinidad thing, right? I boil this type of leaf and I get all my hair back and I'm going to, you know, that sort of thing. So you have to be very careful. And that's why you need to have informed discussions. And that's the purpose of this tonight as well. We have to try informing women more and more about all the things that are available, but all the caveats and all the things that have to be factored in, because every single woman is different. Yep. I don't know if I answered you, my dear.
Yes, thank you very much. I think someone has their hand up, Samsung, SM, and Indira.
Yeah, I just wanted to address, I know you're going through HRT, so we had 2 questions that was in the chat. So one of them is HRT safe for all menopausal women? And then the other question is iron deficiency the same as B12 deficiency? So that came up in the chat. So.
Okay, so when we're in medical school, any question that has all or never in it is never correct, right? Because medicine is not about black and white. Medicine is about shades of gray. So you cannot by any means prescribe HRT off the bat, right? Once somebody is having sort of symptoms or trying to deal with it, right? It is very, very different. And that's why we need the variety. That's why we need to sort of impress upon the powers that be that we need to get more of these options for women, which I'll come to. B12, it's 2 very different elements, right? So iron is one element that causes certain types of problems in terms of anemia, and B12 is different as well. So they cause different types of anemia. They're not the same. So you can't fix one with the other, basically. Yeah? I don't know if that makes sense. Did I answer the question?
I hope so. There's someone else with their hand raised.
Hi, my name is Colleen. My question is very, it's not broad-based. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is low thyroid. And I also yes, autoimmune Hashimoto's. And I also recently had a total hysterectomy. My question is, what possible effect could that have could I experience based on my low thyroid? And I've been trying to read up and get more information on going into menopause, because I have read once you've had a hysterectomy, you immediately go into menopause. Yeah, so that's my question. Basically, the thyroid / menopause
Link.
possibilities there. Yeah,
Right. How old are you, my dear?
47.
And when they, at 47, you took the womb out. You don't mind us talking about this with everybody, right?
No. I had adenomyosis,
Right. Okay.
which treatments weren't working. So the other option was to have a hysterectomy. And my doctor asked me if I wanted to keep my ovaries, and based on my age, etc., not have no intention of having children in the future, nothing, whatever I do. And also I have a family history of endometrial cancer. So I decided to do the total hysterectomy.
Right. Okay. Right. So it's nothing related to cancer. So estrogen in that case it is a safe option for you. Now, what happens is you can have a hysterectomy and leave your ovaries. That's why I asked you about your age. So if you're 40 and you let's say you have issues with regards to fibroids or adenomyosis, whatever, and at 40, remember, you still have another 10, 12 years.
No, I'm 47.
No, I'm just speaking generally.
Oh, okay.
So when you're younger, so people think hysterectomy means taking out sometimes everything. It doesn't. Hysterectomy means taking out your womb. If you have something called, it's a big word, salpingo-oophorectomy. It's a big word that means that the oophorectomy means taking your ovaries. So there are quite a number of women who, when they're relatively young, in their early 40s, less than 45, generally might have a hysterectomy, which is taking out your womb, but leaving your ovaries. In those cases, the ovaries continue to function. So you do not need to have HRT. You may go through a menopause earlier. So let's say if everything was left behind, you would have had a menopause at 50. But by having the hysterectomy at 40, you go through a menopause at 45. Now, in your case, at 47, usually over 45, we say don't leave ovaries behind because there's a propensity for cancer and stuff. You had everything removed. So literally, let's say you had that hysterectomy on a Monday, your system goes into shock, aside from having the surgery, because you've taken away your primary source of estrogen, right? So for a lot of women who I do a hysterectomy on, where I remove the ovaries, once there are no contraindications, right, I usually start HRT soon, because if I wait, right, they will have a very, very miserable time during their recovery, because the hot flushes come within a matter of days, right? All the problems with sleeping and everything. So I usually start the HRT relatively soon. It may be just the phytoestrogens, depending on their risk, or in this case, it might be the Premarin that is on your screen right there, right? So we start with that. And because we start with a low dose, if they have a persistence of symptoms, once there's no contraindication, I could double that dose because the manufacturer allows for that. But remember the principle, the lowest possible dose for the shortest possible time. So Hashimoto's is not a contraindication in this case. I don't know how you're feeling. When did you have the hysterectomy?
2.5 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So you might start feeling things relatively soon because your recovery takes about 6 weeks. So within that time, ideally, right, it's probably a good idea to start looking at options with regards to hormone replacement, right? By the time you wait for all the symptoms to come, you're going to feel quite miserable, and that affects your healing and stuff as well. Right now, are you hypothyroid?
Hypo, yes.
Right. So that's the main cause. Hashimoto's is probably the most common cause for hypothyroidism. And if you think about it, if you don't have thyroid hormone circulating, you need to replace it. So in that case, you need to actually take your thyroxine, right? And
yes,
again,
I'm still taking it.
That's it. So it's two aspects because it's two different endocrine systems, my dear. One has to do with your thyroid, and that has its own issues. So you need to basically stay on thyroxine. It has to be checked either 3 to 6 months to make sure the levels are good, because it starts at 25, 50, 75, 100. So you taper it until you get your sweet spot. But that is somewhat separate, right, from the HRT. I don't think there's any sort of issue with taking HRT in the short to medium term to transition the fact that you had your ovaries out 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Fair enough? Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Right, so we'll try to finish up because everybody's starving now. So this is something I've been trying to get for a long time. When I was in the UK, this is going back to the early 2000s and stuff. One of the big things we had were menopause clinics, and there were a lot of women. You would see somebody, when you look at their notes, you'll see 65, and the woman who comes in looks like she's 38. These are women who do not want to stop HRT because it has such a fantastic effect. So we have to monitor them. We have to do breast screening. We have to check that sort of thing. But there was a significant number of women who had problems with loss of libido. And at that time, when I was training, I actually used to use testosterone pellets because that was part of the guidance and stuff to help these women. That has fallen out of practice because women metabolize testosterone differently. And again, you can't give one standard dose, let's say 10 milligrams, to a woman who is 75 pounds, and then another one who's 250 pounds. It doesn't work. But the problem was, when you give testosterone back to women, right, they started having side effects of it. Right? And this is testosterone, what makes a man a man. You don't want to start growing a beard. You don't want to start losing your hair. That's male pattern baldness, etc. You don't want to become aggressive, and instead of arguing with your partner, you beat him with a broom. That was part of the problem, and we couldn't gauge how testosterone was being metabolized. I know that even in this country, I've been hearing things where women are being given testosterone, which is somewhat very frightening because the doctors, they should not be doing that because it's almost experimenting to a certain extent. And there are changes that occur with testosterone that may be irreversible, such as your voice, right? So if you start talking like Darth Vader because you've been taking testosterone to boost your libido, and you stop the testosterone, that may not change, and you're left with that sort of husky voice. I think Lisa raised the voice. Hands on.
Good night.
Hi, doctor.
Hello, good night.
Going back to the slide that you had before, the one that is on the screen.
Oh, sorry, this one?
Yes. I went to my gynecologist.
Right.
And he given me the one that is on the left, the yellow tablet.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Right, because I was having some lower abdomen pain. And when I went to my GP and I showed him what I was taking, he told me to stop taking it.
Right, but this is a funny thing. When you say low abdominal pain, I could probably list about 150 causes for that right now. How did they determine that it was menopausal related? Menopause related?
Because I was told that I was in premenopause.
And that was causing low abdominal pain?
Yes, more to I had a pain by my pelvic area that was not going.
And that turned it, you did any ultrasound or any tests?
Yes. Yes, he did ultrasound and everything was good. And when I started the tablet, the pain went.
Okay. All right. And then
I had a visit at my GP,
right.
and I showed him what my gynecologist told me to take. And he told me stop taking it and go through menopause naturally.
And how do you feel about that? Did you feel better on it or off it?
I felt better on it.
Okay.
But I was also concerned about hearing that these hormone replacement tablets is cancer related. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Yeah, so I'm just talking about the benefits and stuff, right? But put it this way, all well and good for a man to look at a woman and say, go through